Come on, I totally killed it. Did we win? Did we win?
So a while back I talked about the 25 greatest games of the 2020s, and so naturally, I gotta make the inverse. We gotta talk about the very worst games of the 2020s. Now, generally speaking, I think the 2020s have been pretty good when it comes to video game releases. We've gotten plenty of bangers, but there's also been a fair share of crap, and that's really what we're gonna be focusing on today, the absolute bottom of the barrel when it comes to video games that have released in the 2020s. And so I'll make this really clear. Outside of one title, I do not recommend a single one of these games whatsoever. You only have so much time and energy on this planet, you probably shouldn't spend it with any of these games. I'm not your dad, I can't tell you what to do, I'm just some dude on the internet, but hopefully I can influence your gaming decisions a little and I can influence you to play something that is much, much better. And I can confidently say that there are much better games than these because I've actually played all 15 of these games. These are 15 games that I have personal experience with. I'm not just going off of some Metacritic score or what someone else said online. No, I have actual tangible experience with these games, and I can tell you that these games suck. And they're some of the worst video games ever made, no hyperbole. However, I want to throw it out there that I have not played every single game, certainly not every single bad game, and so if you come to this video expecting to see a certain game on here because you heard it's horrible and it's not here, it's probably because I didn't play it. For instance, Kong Skull Island from a few years ago, that game looked horrible. It looked like an absolute dumpster fire, and I just said, I'm not going to play this. I don't want to subject myself to this garbage, and I certainly don't want to spend any money on it. And the last thing that I want to bring up is that I am not looking at any remakes, re-releases, remasters, etc. I am only looking at games that released for the very first time in the 2020s. Crap right off the bat. So don't expect to see Glover remastered or that 13 remake from a few years ago. We are looking at newly released garbage. But hey, this intro's gone on long enough. Let's get to the games. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Got the Patreon and the super thanks. Any support is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you all so very much. What's the first game we're going to be talking about today? So kicking things off, we have Redfall, which is easily my most disappointing title of this entire list. Out of all of the games on this list, this one hurts the most. It's also the most surprisingly bad game of this entire list. Like, it was developed by Arcane. They've made some incredible games in the past. Dishonored, Prey, the list goes on and on. So when I saw that they were making a vampire immersive sim, I got really excited. I thought that this could be something special, and then it was going to have a co-op focus also. That would be pretty cool as well. There really was a lot of potential for this game, and this is one of the games that I actually built my new computer for. Like, I was genuinely excited for it, and then I got my hands on it, and well, the rest is kind of history. This game was just so shockingly bad. Like, it's still shocking all these years later. With a lot of the other games I'm going to be talking about today, like, it was pretty obvious from the get-go that they wouldn't exactly be high-quality products. Redfall should have been a hell of a lot better than it ended up being. And yes, I know that they did update it for a little bit, but the game was just so fundamentally broken that it doesn't really matter how much you polish the turd. It's still a smelly, stinky turd. You want to get away from your family, loved ones, shit. Get it as far away from your house as possible. While the world, story, and characters of Redfall could have been interesting or exciting or even slightly engaging, that shrimply wasn't the case, and it was pretty bare bones and generic, and I could say the same about the gameplay. It's a first-person shooter where you have an odd little power or two set in one of the most bland open worlds you will ever find. The objectives are as dull and uninspired as it gets. You will face the most brain-dead of enemies. The lobotomized 90-year-old at the retirement home is smarter than the vampires, and the game has one of the most poorly implemented loot systems I've ever seen in a video game. The RPG side of this game is just awful all around. And the presentation didn't really fare any better. The game just had this vanilla-ass look to it, like it looks so by the numbers. The game was also incredibly buggy, especially at release. The updates really didn't do all that much, and the actual moment-to-moment gameplay just wasn't very enjoyable. The combat just wasn't all that exciting, the movement felt incredibly sluggish like you're stuck underwater, and the shooting itself just felt kinda terrible. And if the shooting in the first-person shooter isn't very good, well, I can't imagine things getting much better from here, and it certainly didn't. The game got incredibly repetitive very quickly, and for being a quote immersive sim, there wasn't a single immersive sim element here at all. And that honestly feels more like a deceptive marketing trick than anything else. Redfall is easily one of the biggest blunders in recent AAA game history, and while it's not the worst game on this entire list, it's certainly the game that let me down the most, and it's more sad than anything else. And so here we have another wet fart from 2023 with Lord of the Rings Gollum. Now, I was incredibly suspicious of this game before it even came out. I went, a video game based on Gollum? Really? But part of me was still a little optimistic. I was like, oh, they could make something like Styx, where it's a cool little stealth game, but then I actually got the game. Funny enough, I actually reached out to the developers if I could get a review code, and they denied me and told me that I wasn't a large enough YouTuber for it, so I ended up, just going and buying the game, and, well, the game's quality speaks for itself, or really lack of quality. This is genuinely one of the worst video games I have ever played. It is rare when a game comes out and is just this unlikable. From the moment I started the game, I was like, oh, this fucking sucks. And it really doesn't get any better. The story of this game, yeah, it's pretty terrible. Who would have thought that a story about Gollum wouldn't be the most exciting or lighthearted? Certainly not me, but what we got here, I mean, this is just atrocious, and it feels more like an insult to Lord of the Rings than anything else, and playing the game really isn't any better either. It turns out a video game where you play as Gollum isn't actually that fun. Gollum can't really do all that much, and what he can do isn't enjoyable whatsoever either. The controls are just horrible in this game. He is so unresponsive, clunky, stiff. I never got a good grasp on Gollum's movement, and the game wants you to do a bunch of platforming, and it just feels horrible. His movement is wildly inconsistent, and what you're doing in this game is just kind of a jumbled mess. Sometimes you have to be stealthy, sometimes you have to do these kind of shit little mini games, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what you're doing. It's just so unenjoyable. It's never fun, it's never engaging, and it all feels just really undercooked, like the hot dogs you'll see sitting in 7-Elevens for days at a time. Presentation-wise, I don't have a single nice thing to say about it. Like, it just looks horrendous. Gollum's character model is just bafflingly bad, and the game unsurprisingly ran like shit as well. This is one of those games where somebody should have stepped in during the creative meetings or the initial pitches for this game and just said, what the hell are we doing here? This sounds awful. Like, sure, maybe a Gollum game could have been good, but this game certainly isn't, and I doubt we'll ever see another developer try again. I'd have a hard time recommending this game to even my worst enemies. Not even the die-hard Tolkien fans are going to enjoy anything about this one, and sometimes they don't even know if it's day or night. Gollum's always talking about his precious. My precious, my precious. You know what's precious? My time, and my time got fucking wasted on this game. So for this next entry, hear me out for a minute. We have Cyberpunk 2077, launch Cyberpunk 2077. Now obviously here in 2025, Cyberpunk 2077 is a wonderful game. It's a delightful RPG and it's one of the best games of the 2020s. But when this game launched, man, it was a pile of dookie. Especially if you were playing on PS4 or Xbox One. And I'm not ever going to let CD Projekt live this one down, because I got the game at launch and I just went, what the fuck is this? While there absolutely was a solid foundation here and you could see the vision of this game, it just did not come together, at least not at launch. When it comes to the story, writing, characters, and world building, I never had any issue with that. I knew right off the bat that it was actually pretty good. It was the gameplay and really the stability of the video game that I had all of my issues with. And my issues weren't just a bunch of bugs and glitches, they went much deeper than that. Like, don't get it twisted. There was a lot of bugs and glitches. Some of them were hilarious, some of them were immersion breaking, and some of them were just actually game breaking and legitimately did ruin the entire experience for me. There were more bugs in this game than in the insect house at the zoo. Like, it was just ridiculous. But my issues with this game go deeper than a few bugs and glitches. The combat just didn't feel very good at launch. The shooting felt really underwhelming. Some of the RPG elements and mechanics just felt underdeveloped. Like, the crafting system just felt useless at launch. The driving and vehicles in general just did not handle very well. The open world felt super dead. The police were more of a hoot and a holler than anything else, and the AI was also pretty awful. I could honestly go on for a few more minutes with just how bad the game was at launch, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter all that much, because if you play the game nowadays, you have what is essentially a completely different video game. They really overhauled everything, and the game is obviously a very easy recommendation nowadays. But I'll never be able to forget just how bad the game truly was at launch. Like, it was just shameful. So this next entry is sad more than anything else. It is Babylon's Fall. Now you probably forgot all about this one, so let me refresh your memory. So Square Enix commissioned Platinum Games to create a multiplayer live service game for them. You remember Platinum Games, right? The people who made the incredible single-player action games with the amazing set pieces? Yeah, that doesn't sound too promising right off the bat. It doesn't sound like it plays to Platinum's strengths or the fan base that they've curated, and as it turns out, that's actually a pretty accurate statement. The game wasn't an unredeemable, atrocious pile of trash like, say, Gollum was, but unfortunately, with it being a, multiplayer live service title, it's gotta have players in order to stay alive, and players, well, they left this one pretty quick, and it's not hard to see why. The game was just painfully generic. It was so by the numbers. It lacked any kind of identity, and the combat, which is, what Platinum's really known for, was just painfully average. And so naturally, when the game wasn't very good, players stopped engaging with it. And when players stop engaging with the live service title gets shut down and becomes pretty much unplayable. And so here we are in 2025, and Babylon's Fall has ceased to exist. The game was pulled from all store shelves, and even if you get a secondhand copy, you can't play the game in any capacity. They just shut everything down. And honestly, that just sucks. Even if the game wasn't very good, it should still be playable in some capacity. That's the equivalent of somebody breaking into your house and stealing the game from you. But that's a different discussion for another day. At the very least, we really didn't lose all that much by losing Babylon's Fall. It ultimately would have still been on this list regardless. So here we have a very recent game, the most recent game on this entire list, with Mindseye. Now, it's already very well documented just how bad this game is. I played it myself, and yeah, it's genuinely one of the worst video games I've ever played. It's more baffling than anything else that they thought this game was okay to ship. Especially in today's day and age, where it takes a hell of a lot to ship a AAA game. There's a lot of tests and paces it needs to be run through, but they thought this game was ready. But as it turns out, it most certainly wasn't. The game is bad in really every conceivable way, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the worst game of 2025. Another game would have to try really hard to actually be worse than this. While the game does have the occasional bright spot like the motion capture, the facial animations, and the story, kind of, it really just shits the bed in every other aspect. And I'm not talking about a little turd here and there, I'm talking full on fucking nasty diarrhea that smells atrocious. Like, forget just changing the sheets. You need to pull this shit out of your house, throw it in the dumpster, and set it on fire. You need to quarantine that shit, it's so bad. The gameplay is just so unbelievably dull. This game would feel outdated on the Xbox 360, let alone in 2025. You really just drive from point A to B, shoot the occasional bad guy, follow somebody, and that really is it. The driving, while not awful, isn't anything special, but you do just way too much of it. It feels like there's padding you do so much driving. Yeah, there's padding in the like 7 or 8 hour experience. The game regularly has you drive from one end of the map all the way to the other with no music, no set pieces, no nothing. And yeah, it gets pretty old pretty fast. And then the shooting, the combat, and movement just feel like shit. It's just so underdeveloped. There's like nothing here. You just kind of aim and shoot. You can't hip fire. There's no melee attacks whatsoever. There's no grenades or special equipment. You can take cover, shoot, occasionally use this stupid little drone, and that's really it. The AI are atrocious. The game is ridiculously buggy. It's constantly glitching out on you. The presentation outside of the character models and facial animations is pretty bad. The voice acting is nothing special, and it really commits the cardinal sin of a video game. It's boring. It's one thing when a game is bad. It's another when the game is bad, boring, and just ultimately mind-numbing. Like, take Gollum, for instance. Horrible, horrible game. Probably worse than Mindseye, but it is way more entertaining than Mindseye. You'll want to see how bad that game gets. Mindseye, you just want to turn it off. It's not even so bad that it's good. It's just bad. So here we have another very disappointing one with Saints Row. Now, I don't know if I'm ready to unpack the trauma of the Saints Row reboot, so I'll keep things pretty brief here. I love the Saints Row franchise. Saints Row 2, 3, and even 4 are pretty great games, and they're some of my favorite open world games of all time. The moment I saw this new one, I just knew something was up. I was like, I don't know about this one. I didn't really like the direction that they were taking the series, and I didn't have high hopes for it. And then I got the game, and yeah, this one stung quite a bit. It didn't hurt as bad as Redfall because I didn't go into this one with very high expectations, but it didn't even reach those expectations. This is really one of the worst open world games to come out in like the last decade. It's one of the worst reboots in video game history as well. The plot, the characters, and especially the writing, oh, I just hated it. I didn't like the open world or its activities. The game was incredibly buggy and felt unfinished in certain areas, and I just wasn't enjoying my time with it. I will say the character creator was amazing, like that was 10 out of 10, no notes, great shit there, but that's not going to carry this one. And it's really unfortunate with what happened to Volition after this game came out. They were a legendary studio that shouldn't have been shut down, but yeah, this game sucked. So here we have Avatar: The Quest for Balance. Now, Avatar: The Last Airbender and video games really just don't go together, unfortunately. There really isn't a single good Avatar game outside of that Legend of Korra game, which isn't even all that good either. And so going into this, I didn't have high expectations. I went, yeah, this doesn't look very good, but I'll try it out anyway. And so then I got the game from the publisher, Game Mill, actually, and yeah, the game was horrible. The game was absolutely atrocious, and I don't know how they did it, but they actually made an Avatar game worse than the Avatar games that I grew up with. The game just categorically flops in every conceivable way. Not only is it a terrible retelling of the Avatar: The Last Airbender story, but it's awful to play as well. I'm somebody that loves the story to Avatar: The Last Airbender. I love the characters, the dialogue, the world building. It's all really great stuff, and none of that is captured in this game whatsoever. It's not even like the cliff notes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. They just kind of jump all over the place and claim it's a retelling. Frankly, it's more insulting to Avatar than anything else, and when you're actually playing the game, it's just insulting to the human race. It's just awful. Everything about the gameplay is not only abysmal, but just creatively bankrupt. It felt like they had no ideas whatsoever and had to come up with something in like 6 months, which probably isn't all that far from the truth. The combat is just appalling. It's not fun, it's not engaging, it's mind-numbing, it's dull, it's generic, it's just a hot mess, shrimple as that. And it doesn't matter who you're fighting, whether it's the generic enemies or the boss fights, it's all bad. You also fight Zuko over and over and over in this game, which yes, does happen in the show, but at times it feels like he's the only boss in this entire game, and every single fight with him is exactly the same. Like, seriously? But it's not just the combat that is a disaster, the puzzles are about as dreadful as they get. It's these basic, dull water puzzles or like block pushing puzzles, and I'm just like, who is this made for? This is like the opposite of fun. It feels like this is made for goo goo gaga little babies wah 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 up in here, and even they would think that these are easy and lame. The pacing is horrible, and the game just gets so repetitive. It doesn't run well either, and it has no excuse to not run well. The game doesn't look very good. Even as a budget title, it looks barely above an Xbox 360 game. And don't even get me started on that Subway Surfers ass minigame that shows up way too many times in this. From the moment I saw this minigame, I knew immediately that this game was cooked. Forget cooked. This game was chopped, cooked up in a stew, and eaten by some obese man who goes to Walmart way too much. Like, it's over, and I really can't believe that Nickelodeon did Avatar dirty like that, but that probably shouldn't come as a surprise at this point. So here we have another game that's vanished from the face of the earth with The Day Before. Yeah, you remember this one? At one point, this was the most wishlisted game on Steam, which sounds pretty crazy, especially a few years later now, and once the game hit early access, well, I think a lot of people very quickly took it off their wish list. The game was just painful. This game was genuinely one of the most dreadful experiences I've had with a game in quite some time. It just didn't really have all that much to it. Everything that the trailers had hyped up or any promise that had been shown was just barely even here. If it was there at all to begin with, you kind of just wandered around looting things and killing zombies. The PvP was pretty much not even there, and the game was unsurprisingly just immensely buggy. The game was pulled off Steam pretty quick and everybody was refunded. The game is completely inaccessible nowadays, and you know what? That's probably a good thing. While I am all for game preservation, this game doesn't deserve to be preserved. I'm out here accidentally making bars, beats, and rhythms, but my opinion stands. This game, the scam before, it wasn't worth your time then, and it's not even worth talking about any further, so let's just move on to the next pile of crap. This one just kind of pisses me off, and it's one of the more disappointing titles on this list, and that is Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown. Now, I had a little bit of hype for this one, you know, the older Test Drive Unlimited games are pretty cool, and they were actually a bit ahead of their time. They were like Forza Horizon before Forza Horizon, but this new one, man, it just completely missed the mark. They completely misunderstood what people liked about the previous TDU games, and what we have here now is one of the worst racing games that I have ever played. Where to even start with this one? I guess we can start with Hong Kong, you know. I think it's a pretty cool setting. It's unique, it's different, and it's probably the best aspect of this entire game. And so it's such a shame that the open world sucks in this game. It feels so dead, so lifeless. There's nobody walking around. There's barely any other traffic. It feels as lifeless as Driver 1 did on the PS1. And it's just wasted potential more than anything else. And when it comes to the driving and, you know, the racing game, it's not very good either. It's not absolutely atrocious. You can get used to it, and you can even have some enjoyment here and there with it. But for the most part, I didn't find it all that great. Unfortunately, what you're doing in this game isn't all that great either. It's really just race after race after race. Occasionally, they have a checkpoint variant of it, but it really is from one race to the next. And it gets stale pretty quick, like even faster than if you left a stakeout overnight. And one of the key reasons that the game gets incredibly tedious outside of a lack of variety is just the game's wretched progression and pacing. It just takes way too long to get another vehicle in this game, and by the time you can finally get another vehicle, you have to get an off-roading vehicle for the off-roading events, and so it just takes even longer. And I'm sorry, it just takes too long to get a decent car in this game. What also pissed me off was that this game is always online, it doesn't let you pause, and you can't even restart a race if you're not doing well. Yeah, a modern racing game where you are not allowed to restart the race. Might I remind you, you could restart races on the Super Nintendo like 20 plus years earlier, but not here. No, no, no. You can't do that because it would mess with our always online bullshit that doesn't even matter now because like nobody's playing this game. The music wasn't very good. The presentation wasn't anything special. There were factions introduced, but this has really no effect on the gameplay. And the whole live service element of this game is effectively dead. It was pretty much dead right from the get-go. I played this game on launch and could barely find anybody. I couldn't even get a single race going. I'm not entirely sure if an offline single player mode has been implemented for this game yet, but I really hope it does because I don't see it lasting much longer. Test Drive as a series has really been through the ringer. It has some pretty awful games, and unfortunately, this is one of them. I can't see them doing another TDU anytime soon, and that really sucks because I still feel like there's a lot of potential for a new one. There's still some gas left in the tank, pun absolutely intended. I will see myself out.
Shut up, bitch!
So this next game also kind of pisses me off. It is the Elder Scrolls Blades. Now normally I would never even play a game like this, a free-to-play mobile game, but it was released for the Nintendo Switch and I actually do have some experience with it. And yeah, it sucks. I got very few nice things to say about it. It takes place in between Oblivion and Skyrim, but you know what? The story doesn't frickin' matter here. You're just rebuilding a town and going through some of the worst dungeons that the Elder Scrolls series has ever seen. It honestly is kind of painful to have an Elder Scrolls game on a list like this, but this game, it's got very few redeeming qualities. The combat is just so unenjoyable. It really is allergic to being fun. I didn't have fun with this a few minutes in. I can't imagine how grindy and annoying it gets several hours in. The dungeons were poorly designed. Walking around them wasn't enjoyable. The game is just littered with microtransactions all over, and rebuilding this village, I'm sorry, I just wasn't having it. Even as a phone game, it doesn't look all that great, and ultimately, it's just one of those forgettable mobile titles that like 10 years later, you read an article about how the game is finally being shut down because like 3 whales were somehow keeping it afloat. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend this game to even the most die-hard of Elder Scrolls fans. Even if you have the fucking Dovahkiin tattooed on your body, you should still stay away from this one. Normally, I wouldn't fuck with a game like this, but it being on Switch opened the floodgates and I truly saw what the worst Elder Scrolls game of them all is, and yeah, came out in 2020. So for this next entry, I don't just have one game, I actually have 3 games, and it's 3 Neptunia games. Neptunia Sisters vs. Sisters, Neptunia Game Maker R Evolution, and Neptunia Riders vs. Dogoos. Now, I'm not afraid to admit it, I like some of the older Hyperdimension Neptunia games. I think they're just some mindless fun, they're not particularly deep, rewarding, excellent experiences, but they're nice games to just turn your mind off on. They're not great games by any means, but they're not total dog shit either. These 3 latest Neptunia games, they're just horrible. Sisters vs. Sisters has some of the worst combat I have ever seen in an action RPG. It feels so fucking bad. It's so delayed, it's slow, it's sluggish, it's clunky, it's unresponsive. The animations have to finish before you move on to the next move. I could not believe how bad the combat was. It's easily the worst combat of all the Neptunia games, and this is like the 15th game in the series. You would think they would have figured it out by now, but nope, this was just appalling. And the rest of the game wasn't anything special either. Neptunia Game Maker R Evolution ran like total ass on PS5, which is ridiculous. The game doesn't look very good, and even though the combat was a little better, it still wasn't very good. The dungeon design was just painfully generic and by the numbers. All of these dungeons went on way too long, and it was just wildly unenjoyable. Yeah, there was the whole game maker side of things, which wasn't as bad, but it doesn't really matter. The game still wasn't very good. And then we have Riders versus Dagoos, and this, what the fuck even is this? If it wasn't for mindseye, this easily would have been the worst game of 2025. Like, this is barely even a game. You just kind of drive around collecting the Dugos before the AI does, and that's really it. The game is like an hour to an hour and a half long, and it's not even an enjoyable hour. And I feel like all of these games are missing the soul, the writing, and the humor of the older Neptunia games. At this point, I think they need to just totally reboot the franchise, start over again, and go back to being a turn-based RPG. That was when the series was at its best. And you might wonder, if this series sucks now, why do you keep playing these games? Why are you buying them? Funny enough, I'm not even buying these games. The Neptunia company Idea Factory is literally sending me all of them. They know that I like the Neptunia franchise, and so they just send me the next one, and I try it and go, wow, this really fucking sucks. And then they send the next one. I'm not ever going to say no, because I'm hopeful that one day the series can return to the quality of the original games, which wasn't even all that high to begin with. But I sure as fuck can tell you that if they weren't sending me the latest Neptunia game, I would have given up on this series long ago, because these latest 3 games, they're just in the shitter. And at this point, I think even die-hard Neptunia fans are done with this. Like, please give us a good game next. That would be appreciated. So here we have an unfortunate game, that being Concord. Everybody's talked about this game to death. I'm not going to go over the game's history. I will just tell you that as things stand right now, this is actually the last game to feature myself, yours truly, in the game credits. And that, yeah, that's just sad. I need to try to get with another game studio to get at least one more game credit to my name, because I can't let this be my lasting legacy. We all know what happened with this game, and it's going to go down as one of the biggest L's in gaming history. And the worst part is, you can't even play the game nowadays. And so here we have The Grinch Christmas Adventures, which also released in the magical year of 2023. Now, going into this one, I was not expecting a good game. I wasn't even expecting a decent game, but by the time I was done with this, I went, wow, this game is just absolutely horrendous from start to finish. I have very few, if any, good things to say about this. So it's about the Grinch, you know, doing Grinch things. Oh, what the hell, man. The game tries to tell some kind of Grinch story, but it's all just thrown together so sloppily that I could probably tell a better story with stick figures out here. When it comes to actually playing it, it's also not any better. It is just such an abysmal 3D platformer from a 2.5D perspective. You do some platforming, they do stealth areas, air quotes here, and you collect some presents. It is just mind-numbingly simple and basic. It was made for like toddlers. The game was made for the smallest of small children, like where they can't take the controller out of their mouth because they want to suck or chew on it small. And honestly, looking at this game under any kind of critical lens, or really even any further than this, just seems a bit unfair. The game is unsurprisingly one of the most simple video games I've ever played. It's one of the most dull experiences I've had in years, and it's easily one of the most forgettable experiences I've had with any piece of media in my entire life. I tell you, my morning commutes to San Francisco every day when I was going 5 days a week were more memorable than this game. They were probably more enjoyable too, and I was just sitting in traffic most of the time. I don't have nice things to say about this game, but I'm not going to go any further because, again, it's clear the game was made for literal fucking infants. Forget goo goo gaga, wah wah wah. This is like the baby just came out of the womb and you're going to have them play a game, so you give them this for some reason. No. Give your kid Mario, Sonic, Donkey Kong, give them SpongeBob, give them just about any other E-rated game, and they're going to enjoy it more than this. They say the Grinch's heart grew 3 times its size. Well, my patience shrunk 3 times its size while I was playing through this, and I had enough of it. And so here we have Funko Fusion, and what I'm about to say is probably one of the most insane things I have ever said and will be the craziest thing you hear all day. It's more insane than me saying TGI Fridays has any good food. The earth is about to shake, so prepare yourself, here it goes. Funko Fusion is probably the best game of this entire list. Now, of course, that is excluding Cyberpunk 2077, but I promise you there is not a gun to my head. Funko is not paying me anything to say that. Their ass is way too poor to pay me. Outside of Cyberpunk, this really is the game with the highest level of quality that I'm talking about today, and unfortunately, it's the fucking Funko game from last year. This game, unfortunately, was just not very good. It wasn't an absolute abomination. It wasn't a failed abortion that should have stayed away, and it wasn't a disastrous dumpster fire, but it wasn't very enjoyable. The game essentially tries to recreate the LEGO experience that we've all known for 15 plus years now, only it completely flops and fails to understand what made the LEGO games enjoyable to begin with. First off, I fucking hate Funkos. With their soulless, stupid little beady eyes, their lack of emotion or really expression in general, they're just so unfunny, unlikable, and I just have this desire to smash them whenever I see them. So an entire video game about them, yeah, I knew I wasn't really gonna like that, and I certainly don't like what's going on in this game. It's not charming, it's not entertaining, it's not cute like the LEGO games. It just, yeah, the Funkos are pretty miserable, especially during the cutscenes, and playing the game, it's really not any better either. So it is part third-person shooter, part action-adventure where you solve some puzzles and go through some pretty brief levels. Like LEGO games, you get to just smash everything, and there's plenty of collectibles here. Unfortunately, this really just doesn't come together all that well. Like, it's not unplayable, and again, it's probably better than just about everything I've talked about today, but that doesn't mean it was all that enjoyable. The levels are very underwhelming, they're generic, they're dull, uninspired, and it's never too clear what you're actually supposed to do. They just kind of give you some characters to play as and are like, they can do things, figure it out, which is kind of what LEGO does, but LEGO does a pretty good job of basically telling you what you're supposed to do, or at least, inferring what you're supposed to do. Here, you just kind of wander around like a dumbass until you finally figure it out, and that's just not too enjoyable. That's like the worst aspect of the LEGO games, just times 100, and that's pretty much the entire game. The combat, look, I wasn't expecting anything special here, but this wasn't good either. When LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga from almost 20 years ago has better combat than a modern game that is trying to replicate said combat style, you know things aren't going to be good here. I also hated just how corporate and soulless the entire game felt. Like, don't get it twisted, Funko's about as soulless as it gets, but the game itself didn't have to feel this soulless. It feels like they grabbed a bunch of famous IPs for the sake of them being famous IPs. They don't really treat him with all that much respect. They're just kind of like, oh, The Walking Dead, oh, He-Man, you like He-Man, right? Here's plenty of He-Man, we know you love He-Man. Well, guess what? I don't love He-Man. Why the fuck is He-Man here? Not only is He-Man here, but you gave him 5 levels. You gave Invincible and Five Nights at Freddy's 1 level each. Seriously, the series people would actually want to see, modern series, you barely give any attention to. Look, Funko Fusion, I don't recommend this game. I don't think it's a very good game. Even after the updates, it's still not great. But it's not an unplayable mess, and I could kind of see some people actually liking this. I have heard of people who do like Funko Fusion. They do exist. They're probably about as frequent as Bigfoot, or maybe the Loch Ness Monster, maybe even as rare as the TGI Fridays fan, but they do exist out there. But even with that in mind, you should probably avoid this one. It's probably in the same bargain bins that a bunch of the Funkos are at your local Walmart or equivalent store. It's licensed shovelware, shrimple as that. And so to round things off, we have the unfortunate Skull and Bones. Yep, a Ubisoft game did make the list. The quadruple A title that was supposed to light the world on fire is one of the worst games of the 2020s. While I wouldn't say that this game is totally unplayable, and it's probably up there with Funko Fusion in terms of quality, it's just such a dull experience. And what sucks even more about this is Ubisoft figured out how to make a pirate experience 10 plus years ago, but then they went and made this, which is honestly a step back from Assassin's Creed 4. I actually played a fair amount of this game, and it's not like there was no redeemable qualities here. There absolutely is a vision, there is a foundation here. Unfortunately, the game just doesn't really take advantage of it. It's a slog of a game, it's incredibly grindy, and it has you doing the same things over and over. The ship combat, is actually somewhat enjoyable. Yeah, you can't board the other ships, at least not currently, and it does feel a little watered down, get it, watered down, compared to Assassin's Creed 4, but there is actually something here. But unfortunately, the game can't coast on this combat alone. The game needs more than that. It needs structure, it needs interesting quests, maybe some good characters, a storyline, and yeah, it doesn't have any of that. It was just so grindy right from the get-go, and I was like, how is this fun? How is this supposed to be fun? I'm like 3 hours into the game and almost 2 of those hours have just been resource gathering. Like, this is not enjoyable. This is not what I want from this kind of experience, and I don't think I'm alone in that sentiment. The world, the story, the characters, the dialogue, I mean, it exists. Yeah, it's there, but it's just so forgettable, generic, uninspired, and ultimately just unmemorable. There's no Edward here, there's no fun pirates, there's no cool alternative take on history or anything like that. No, it's pretty dull stuff. There's also a bunch of microtransactions, there's a bunch of costumes that they want you to pay for. Anything that looks cool, pretty much, they want you to pay for, or you can grind hella for it, of course. And at the end of the day, I fell off this one pretty hard, and I have no interest in going back to it. I know Ubisoft is trying to bring it back with all of these updates and all this other stuff, but why are they even bothering, man? Just focus on making another game. At this point, just remake Assassin's Creed 4. That would be way better than whatever they're trying to do here. I'm almost dead certain that they're going to take like all of these assets and what they have here to just try to remake Assassin's Creed 4 so they at least salvage something from Skull and Bones. I can't imagine this game was all that profitable, and it's just more sad than anything else. But speaking of sad, we are at the end of the video. That is all. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you made it to this part of the video, you can comment Funko. That's going to be our code word. I want to smash all of the Funkos in existence, Hulk Ultimate Destruction style, Donkey Kong Bonanza style. That game's hella good. And so with that, I'll talk to you all later. Peace.